Welcome to Orioles on the Verge. This is Zach Spedden, joined as always by Bob Phelan and Nick Stevens. And on tonight's episode, we're going to break down the latest injury news in Birdland as Grayson Rodriguez and Andrew Kittredge are confirmed to begin this season on the IL, while Gunnar Henderson's status for opening day is uncertain. Then we'll take questions from our mailbag. But first, Orioles on the Verge is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting in 2025. Whether you're a seasoned fan or a first-time bettor, BetOnline is your ultimate game day companion. With the largest selection of odds on everything from NBA and college basketball to the NHL and UFC, BetOnline continues to be your number one sports betting source. From every three-pointer to hat trick, BetOnline has you covered with odds, stats, and more for every game, every play, and every win. BetOnline, the game starts here. Now, at the beginning of camp, we were feeling pretty good about the Orioles' health. We got through that opening press conference from Mike Elias, and there was no major injury news aside from Trevor Rogers and Jorge Mateo. And it seemed that the Orioles would go into the season with their bullpen and their rotation intact. That will not be the case. So as reliever Andrew Kittredge, who the team signed in the offseason as a free agent, is now expected to miss multiple months because of a left knee injury. Meanwhile, Grayson Rodriguez was pulled from a start last week because of an issue with his right triceps / back of the elbow. He has been placed on the IL and will not pitch and will not be healthy by opening day. Now, when you hear about a triceps elbow concern with the pitcher, the worst case scenario is Tommy John surgery. So far, the Orioles are not indicating that that's going to be the case for Rodriguez, but we have to see how things progress here in the next few weeks. Meanwhile, Gunnar Henderson continues to be sidelined with an intercostal strain that is affecting his side. The Orioles hopeful that Henderson is going to be ready for opening day, but as we get closer to the start of the regular season, Henderson has not appeared in the game now in over a week. So a lot of questions right now concerning the health of this team as we get further into camp. And let's start with Rodriguez. And Nick, I'll start with you here. So far, there's two ways you could look at it. On one hand, this is another injury for a pitcher who's just coming off a lat injury, expected to be a really key contributor to this team this year. On the other hand, right now, at least it seems like he might be able to get by without Tommy John surgery, especially if this injury is not affecting the ligament, but we don't know at this point.
I'm throwing my hands up because I don't know anymore. All the reports seem like he's not about to hit up Garrett Cole and carpool down to Texas together for surgery. But again, Grayson came out of that game and was just like, yeah, I just wasn't feeling it today, and just it's nothing. And then now here we go. He's shut down for a little bit. So I don't really know what to think about the injury updates. I'm not like spiraling, but it's frustrating because yes, there's depth to cover Grayson missing a month. But at the same time, like you didn't want to test that depth here. Be talking about testing that depth here on March 10th. And this is 3 years now in a row. We're talking about another injury with Grayson. And this was supposed to be the year that like he really started to take off. Look how well he pitched. Look at how well this team performed when Grayson was on the mound last year. And, you don't go out and get the frontline starter. Expecting Grayson to take this big step forward here in year 3, and now he's going to be pushed back, hopefully a couple of weeks. But I honestly, I don't know what to think. And I think that's more so just me like trying to protect myself and not start spiraling, because I remember spiraling pretty hard last year with Kyle Bradish stuff. And remain optimistic that he will be back in a couple weeks, and there is no ligament damage and he's okay. But yeah, this is certainly not an ideal way to I'd be not the ideal way or not the ideal conversation I'd like to be having here on March 10th right now.
Yeah, obviously it sucks because he was supposed to be the guy. It was either him or Eflin probably going on opening day. But I mean, I see a lot of freaking out as usual on Orioles Twitter or Orioles social media platforms. And it's like no Gunnar Henderson, no Grayson Rodriguez. I mean, Gunnar, he'll be fine. We'll get to him in a bit. But I mean, you don't get a cortisone shot for a ligament damage. I think they would know by now if it was something to do with the ligament. So sounds like maybe bone spurs, worst case scenario, which again, that's just speculation. But I think a couple weeks off, hopefully it's better, if not a little bit longer. But I don't think this is going to be a case where he goes under the knife. Doesn't seem like there's any indication of that. So, not ideal, but this is why this offseason, when they couldn't get that frontline starter, was about building the depth. And I think this is exactly why, for circumstances like this. Hopefully he's back by the beginning of June, and you can get Cade Povich in there, who's had an amazing spring training and looked fantastic. Get him a shot in the rotation out of the jump. And hopefully everyone can fill in for him until he can get healthy. And then he comes in and then he breaks out and is, the guy we know he can be, but he just needs to do it consistently over the course of a full season, maybe in 2026. And there's still time to get top of the rotation arm. Sandy Alcantara is still out there. We'll talk about him, I'm sure, a little bit later in this episode. But, man, if it's between us and the Yankees, like going after Sandy Alcantara, I'm almost willing to give up my youngest to get him in the Orioles uniform. So.
Yeah, I think that what's tough about Rodriguez's injury, it's tough in multiple respects, but there had been, I think, a little bit of a shift among Orioles fans in the last few weeks where, okay, you're upset they didn't get a starter, but then the team's pretty much healthy coming into camp, and you look at the rotation 1 through 5, and you figure, well, if the lineup and the bullpen are better, there's at least enough here to buy time. If you need to go out and get an ace at the deadline, you do it then. But for now, you've got enough to be competitive. But a lot of that, I do think, was riding on Rodriguez's health and success. And Nick, I agree with you. It is disappointing, especially when you consider that you look at his last 3 seasons, 2024, 2 IL stints, including one that ended his season early. 2023 was mostly healthy, but that came on the heels of a 2022 in which he was shut down early because of a lat injury. So I know that all 3 of us believe in Rodriguez's promise and that there's a really high-level major league starting pitcher there. But he's going to have to clear this hurdle at some point.
Who's the guy that does the health grades? What's Grayson's health grade right now? I don't imagine it's very good at this point. It's just, I don't know. It's one thing, and I don't immediately go to the we should have done this, we should have done that this offseason. It's just it's I feel frustrated for Grayson because I want to see Rodriguez on this mound healthy because I hate the labels. He's an ace, he's a 1, he's a 2. Just give me 5 starters at this point. I really don't care. And as far as the regular season goes, but Grayson Rodriguez, like you said, we know what type of pitcher he can become, and he flashed that last year. He showed it for a long stretch. He didn't just flash it. He showed it for a good chunk of the season last year. And to see this young arm go down like this, and in the back of my mind, whenever you talk about injuries and you make jokes about pitcher injuries, in the back of my mind, it was always, Grayson hasn't had that serious injury yet. When is it going to happen? But you shove that down and just put that dark thought away. And here we are, talking about this yet again. So I don't know. I mean, you can look around the rest of the league and be like, yeah, Garrett Cole. Who was it for the Mariners? Which one was it?
George
Gilbert?
Kirby.
Kirby with the shoulder going to be shut down. Looks like about a month. Like it's on and on and on. The pitching injuries already piling up. Francisco Alvarez, catcher for the Mets. Like the injuries are piling up already, but I don't care about the other teams and their injuries. Like it's this one stings. And when it's 3 years in a row now, it's kind of like, all right, what now? There's always going to be this like watching Grayson Rodriguez outings. I feel like at this point of, what was that? Why'd he wince? Like, I hate that.
Yeah. And it's interesting that he was altering his delivery a little bit this year to try to take more pressure off of his lats, which have been an issue in the past, pulling muscles there. But maybe that had something to do with this arm injury. I don't know. I mean, either it's just he's got to get used to it and get through that soreness, or he's got to go back to the old delivery, or it has nothing to do with it whatsoever. I don't know. I'm sure the team does. But yeah, it's just really, really unfortunate. But he's still only 25. So honestly, the way pitchers develop, he could be a Kevin Gausman where it's like he shows stretches of great stuff, but never really puts it together. And then he signs a free agent contract at some point and takes off from there, kind of like Gosman and Arrieta and other horror stories of Orioles past. But I don't think we're to that point yet, but it is certainly frustrating.
We'll talk about this a little bit more when we get into the mailbag segment in a moment, but I do want to go to Kittredge and Henderson's injury situations, which, as I mentioned at the top of the show, are very different. Kittredge, we know right now, is going to miss multiple months, and it is a setback for an Orioles bullpen that was counting on Kittredge to come in after signing a 1-year, $10 million deal to pick up some middle to high leverage situations out of the bullpen. I think that how I view the bullpen is that it starts and ends with Felix Bautista in terms of effectiveness and where you're going to be able to put guys in the roles. Nevertheless, I know there are going to be times here in the next few months where the Orioles cough up a lead in the 7th inning or the bullpen can't keep a game close that you think it would have been nice to have had Kittredge out there in that spot, and the Orioles don't have him. Henderson, we still don't know exactly what's going to happen. He may be ready by opening day. He may not be. It seems like the Orioles are starting to make some contingency plans by putting Jackson Holliday at shortstop, and we'll talk about their shortstop options in a little bit. But just want to get your guys' thoughts on these two situations with Kittredge and Henderson.
I have no concern about Gunnar. I think it's a non-story, to be honest. If he's slow out of the gates, so be it. There's 162 games. Kittredge injury, to me, it's a bummer just because he's the easiest of the three, obviously, to replace, and I think the Orioles can replace him. But what hurts is like the whole Jeff Hoffman situation. You don't sign him because of the medicals. He signs with Toronto. He runs his mouth. The Orioles pivot to Kittredge, and now Kittredge is out for a big chunk of the season. And I didn't really have strong opinions when we signed him until like we hopped on it. And when we were talking about the signing and talking through kind of the ripple effects of what the signing could mean for the rest of the bullpen, that's when I started feeling like, all right, I really do like the signing. And that was like the first time where it seemed like Orioles social media was united, that everybody liked the signing. But yeah, I just felt better after us talking about it. Like, all right, we're going to get guys back in roles that are better suited for them, right? You can kick Yennier Cano out a little bit more, not the 8th inning guy, right? You can mix and match Sir Anthony Dominguez and Kittredge and whoever else there in the 8th inning, because we knew before it was officially announced. I think everyone knew Felix Bautista was going to be slow played at the beginning of the season, returning from Tommy John surgery, and have that veteran presence there in Kittredge felt good. But now he's going to be gone. I do feel confident, though, in rosters are going to shake up like crazy over the next couple of days, next couple of weeks as spring training wraps up and rosters become finalized. We know Michael Elias is going to be scouring that waiver wire, and you're going to be able to replace Kittredge, I think. So I'm not too concerned. I still like this bullpen. I think we have a bullpen question later on, and in that, I'm going to give a very confident answer with this bullpen. But it is, again, a little bit of a bummer.
Yeah, it's certainly ironic to say the least. But just looking at a debridement, that's basically a knee cleanup. I saw 4 to 6 week recovery time. Just say 8 weeks because he's a little bit older, and then a rehab stint. He'll be back sometime in May. So it's not like it's some huge loss, hopefully, as long as recovery goes well, as you would hope. Gunnar, yeah, I'm not worried. I would be honestly surprised if he's not running down the orange carpet on opening day in the starting lineup. But if has to start on the IL for a week, it'll be okay. It's not. I've seen people say we don't even have our star player. It's like, come on, he's going to be fine. It's just a ramp bump injury, a little bit of a twisted rib muscle. He's going to be good. And Felix Bautista looked good today. Seems like he's adding a tick of velocity every time out. So I think he should be good to go pretty early on. I think he'll crack 100, I think, in his first appearance in the regular season. That's my prediction.
Yeah, velocity climbing up for Bautista in his outing against the Pirates on Monday night. And I'll go now into our mailbag, starting with this first question from Seth. What would a possible pitching move or lack of a move tell you about the Orioles' confidence in Grayson, Kittredge, and others to come back from injury? I'll start with Bob.
I honestly don't think it really much matters either way. The Orioles front office is not one I think that operates out of like fear or panic. Like they'll take their time, even if Grayson's going to be back pretty quickly, or if he's going to be out for the first half. I think they wouldn't really change anything. I think they set themselves up depth wise, like talked about earlier, to handle something like this. And I still think they're always looking for upgrades, even if everybody was healthy. I still think they would be talking to the Marlins about Sandy Alcantara for either way. So honestly, I'm not sure it makes much difference. Although maybe if they do go sign David Robertson or something like that, maybe Kittredge might miss more time than I speculated before.
Yeah, I don't think it really tells you anything. Just like if they're in on Sandy Alcantara, insert big name pitcher here, whoever that may be. If they're in on that guy and conversations are ongoing, I don't think even if Grayson's going to be out an extended period of time, I don't think those conversations are going to speed up. It is what it is at this point. And if you're another team, like if you're the Marlins, are you really going to say Sandy Alcantara, trade him now? Like right now at this point, like I'm going to wait. Especially he looks this good in spring training. I'm going to let him eat a little bit, let some more injuries pile up, and let the bidding war begin closer to the trade deadline. But yeah, I don't think because whether or not Elias is aggressive right now and to go off and get another big arm at the moment, I don't think it's specifically because of an injury. Like the trade discussions are going to continue to happen naturally and come to fruition or not. I think the only move again I see is there's going to be a lot of roster churn coming up, and the Orioles will be active there. And I'm sure we'll see a couple names get cycled through over the next couple of weeks. But that's just natural roster cycle that this organization is going to do to try to find the next Danny Coulomb or someone like that. So yeah, no concern there.
Yeah, I agree. I think that if they're, keeping an eye on Alcantara or another pitcher, they're not going to become more desperate and give up more than they want to give up because of Grayson Rodriguez's injury. And just reading between the lines of the way this offseason unfolded, I'm just speculating here, but my sense is that the reason a deal didn't come together was because of prospects not matching up or teams not valuing players the same way the Orioles value them or vice versa, and not a money issue. So in other words, if it was just a few more $1 million that could make Sandy Alcantara or Pablo Lopez an Oriole tomorrow, yeah, you might put that money on the table now that Grayson Rodriguez is going to be out for a little while, but I don't think you're necessarily going to give up more in terms of players to make that move happen. And the other thing, too, is that I wanted to point this out. Granted, I did not research this thoroughly before we got into this episode, but I feel like the track record lately of pitchers who sign in spring training and then begin the year on the major league roster or come up after a week or two is not that good, at least early on. Blake Snell put together a really good year for the Giants last year, but he got off to a slow start. Jordan Montgomery was a late sign for the Diamondbacks last year. He was terrible. So I don't know if you signed David Robertson now that you're necessarily getting the best version of David Robertson.
Well, I feel like I agree, first of all, but I feel like maybe with relievers, it could be a little bit better than with starting pitchers with the build up if they're trying to rush into that. So yeah, certainly like a Kyle Gibson or Lance Lynn, I'm not super interested in. I prefer the depth guys we already have, like Povich, even Albert Suarez, Brandon Young looked great this spring before being optioned. So stick with that home when it comes to starters. Maybe with relievers, you think you can ramp someone up pretty quickly out of the bullpen. Maybe that's better, but it's kind of weird that Robertson's still a free agent, honestly, anyway. So I think it could be speculated that he's either just old and doesn't want to take a minor league deal, but he had a great year last year. So maybe he's dealing with an injury himself. Who knows?
Yeah, I'll pass on the old guy that's been sitting at home. You can find a younger arm that somebody like a team like the Rays, there's always a guy that they want to keep. They should keep on the roster, but the roster crunch is just too much and someone gets cut. Pounce on that guy. But it's either way. But speaking of Gunnar, let's go doomsday scenario here. Gunner's out for 2 months. What is your starting infield? All right, let's keep it simple. Let's just do the quick IL stint. Gunnar does have to miss the first week or two. What's your starting infield? This from the Bird is the word, by the way. What's your starting infield on opening day? Zach.
Starting infield, I think, would look a little bit something like we saw on Monday night between the Orioles and the Pirates. I would have probably Ryan Mountcastle. You're opening up in Toronto over at first base. Ramon Urias at second. Jordan Westburg at third, and Jackson Holiday at short. I like that lineup the best because I think that if of your two emergency shortstop options, Holiday is better defensively than Westberg. He's played the position more recently. I think he's a little bit more comfortable over there, and you still have that ability to mix and match with Westberg to put him at second base from time to time. In that scenario, and I know we have a question about this coming up, but in that scenario, I'm guessing that Levon Soto or Emmanuel Rivera get the extra roster spot that is open because of Henderson being on the IL. We'll see. But for now, that would be my starting infield.
Yeah, I think Mountcastle, Urias, Holiday, Westberg sounds about right. But I don't know. Is Holiday really ready to take over shortstop at the major league level? If it's for more than a week, maybe not. But if it's that limited absence, then yeah, I think he could easily do that, and get comfortable pretty quickly. I think he's played the position his whole life. So I pretty much agree with Zach.
Samuel Basayo at first base.
Come on, let's do it. Come on.
No, that's going to be I think the lineup you saw tonight against the Pirates, Monday night against the Pirates is what you're going to see. Minus catcher, you're going to see Adley instead of Basayo. But to go back, to continue that question from Garrett wants to know, the Machine or Soto? Who gets, or Vasquez? There are three options there. Who gets that spot if it's for 2 weeks or so?
I think it's most likely Soto, but I do like Vasquez, what we saw of him defensively, even at the plate. I really like this guy. I think he's a really sneaky waiver claim there, and he's got two options left. Great depth to have at Norfolk. But yeah, I think Soto seems like he's at least getting the reps that would make it seem like he's the guy if need be for a short time. I think he still has an option left as well. You could have Holiday stay at second, Soto could play some short, at least against righties. Right, I think he's a lefty. I don't know a ton about Levon Soto, but it could be a switch hitter. But yeah, I'll say Soto.
Yeah, I'll go with Soto too. He does have options remaining and can probably be a guy that, like Bob said, you put him out there occasionally against righties, or if you're not entirely sure of Holiday's defense at shortstop, there's your late game defensive replacement. Now, if it's a longer term injury with Henderson being out, I think that they will try to look for more out of the bat, which could put Emmanuel Rivera in play. But I think if it's a short term injury, Levon Soto has the edge.
I'm just going to say the Machine because the guy is right. I was going to say the kid. He's not a kid. He's like 31, 32 years old. You guys are correct. It's going to be either Vasquez or Soto. But can we just take a second to shout out the Machine here? Like this kid, go back to his college days. He had a sub 10% strikeout rate when he was at VCU his final 2 years. So a little Virginia bias there. But, even across his minor league career, he's a sub 15% strikeout rate guy. The Phillies actually took him in the Rule 5 draft in 2019 for the A's, who already had a deal in place to trade for him because Oakland was super high on this guy because two reasons: his defensive versatility and he walked a ton. He's a very pesky hitter, and he's showing that here in spring training. I know it's not going to be him, but man, the storyline I think would be awesome. If I'm going to have to miss out on Gunnar Henderson for 2 weeks, I like the 31-year-old getting another shot to reach the big leagues, and he's earned it at least. Regardless, I'm going to enjoy watching him when he's down in Norfolk this year as depth, but just shout out to him, man. What a fantastic spring training after spending I don't know how long he's been in Mexico, but at least last year he was in Mexico. Getting another chance here.
Yeah, I mean, he looks like he's bigger than he was the last time around in the pros in the US. So yeah, seems like he can impact the ball. I'll definitely enjoy watching him at Norfolk. I don't see it happening out of spring training. But I'll go into a fun question here. If you're a member of our Discord channel, and if you're not, why not? Where are you? Let's go. Join up. But patron KTGTV likes to ask questions, 5 questions of everyone that hops on, just to get their quick thoughts on some hot topics that tend to pop up on the Discord every once in a while. And he said, interested to hear our thoughts on these questions, just to get that out there. So number 1, thoughts on Ryan Mountcastle, keep or trade. Number 2, thoughts on Jorge Mateo, good, bad, indifferent. Number 3, thoughts on Mullins. Should he play a lot? Should he hit against lefties? Number 4 is, do you like bunting? Would you like to see the Orioles utilize bunting in games? And number 5, what is the better WAR, F WAR or B WAR? Let's start with Zach.
So by every so often these pop up in Discord, do you mean every morning approximately between 8:25 and 8:45 a.m. and for 3 minutes at a time before it cycles over the next thing?
Basically, yeah.
Yeah. I'm just joking around with them. So for number 1, you're keeping him for now because you removed the wall in. I don't think that Kobe Mayo is breaking the door down right now to take over that spot from him. You see what you can get from Mountcastle with a more advantageous dimensions at Camden Yards this year. Mateo, I'm kind of middle of the road on Mateo. He is what he is, so I guess I would say meh. He's a nice weapon off the bench for his speed and his defense when he's healthy. Not much more than that. Cedric Mullins is one of the streakiest hitters on the planet. When he is locked in, you should play him against lefties, but when he's not, he shouldn't be anywhere near left-handed pitching. Bunting for a hit in the right situation, don't have a problem with it. Sacrifice bunts, no, don't like them at all. Suicide squeeze is fun if you can pull it off and that run wins you the game. Otherwise, again, not a huge fan of that. Number 5, I honestly forget now what the difference between F4 and B4 is. I know that they've closed the gap over the years, and at one point I know I preferred B4, so I'll stick with that. But I'm not entirely sure that I'm up to speed on it.
Yeah, with that one, I don't know what goes into him either. Don't know anymore. I was going to look it up. Don't care. It's F4. It's Fangraphs. I only use Baseball Reference to look up college players' summer ball stats, I think. And at this point, Fangraphs is incorporating college stats. I'm Team Fangraphs. But the other questions, Mountcastle, all offseason, I was on Team Trade him. Like, even with the wall coming in and a hopeful rebound, like, statistically, he's pretty replaceable. But I have since, I think, bought into it a little bit and invested a lot into Mountcastle's resurgence. And it would greatly benefit my bank account if he did that in Baltimore. So I'm going to say stick in Baltimore just for this year. And let's see that rebound. Mateo, same. I'm just mad. If he's on the team, I'm going to cheer for him. I'm not going to sit here and boo a guy. Like, unless you're just an absolutely terrible human being off the field, like, you're on this team, you're an Oriole, I'm going to cheer for him. I want you to do well. So if Mateo's on the roster, I hope he succeeds. But if they DFA'd him tomorrow, I probably wouldn't think about him again. Mullins, it's a tough one because, yeah, it's when he's hot, he's hot. But I don't see why you need to play him against lefties. Like, Colton Cowser is more than adequate out there in center field, 96 percentile arm strength. He had an 89 WRC plus against lefties last year. Not super great, obviously, but Cedric Mullins was 43. And I'm willing to place my bet on Colton Cowser improving in that area versus Cedric Mullins, who is 6 years older. So yeah, I'm going to go with you got Cowser, you got O'Neill, you've got Kerstad looking pretty good this spring. I think you've got enough options where you don't need to hit. You got Ramon Laureano here now in town. I don't think you need to play Cedric Mullins against lefties there. I was trying to find the projections too. I think Cedric Mullins again is projecting to be like super terrible against lefties. Bunting, I do see the value in it in certain situations. Frederick Bencosme almost, we had the hopes of Frederick Bencosme making bunting wonderful, but yeah, I don't think that's going to happen. I'm scarred by bunting because I watch so much college baseball, and no one loves bunting more than a mid-major college baseball coach. Not even mid-major, just this weekend, I'm watching Virginia Tech, Georgia Tech, and it's like their 1 or 2 hole hitter. Bases are empty. It's early in the game, like third or fourth inning, I think. There are 2 outs. Virginia Tech is already up by 1. The kid goes up and bunts, which obviously was the direction given him by the coach. But he can't lay down the bunt. He gets 2 strikes on him. What does he do? He hits a home run. Uh, it's the most annoying thing ever. I was literally yelling at my laptop as I'm watching this game. I don't care. No. I get it in certain situations, but honestly, in April, May baseball regular season games, I'd prefer if we not bunt. Swing away, get on base. I am team let's be super aggressive on the base paths. I like that talk coming out of Orioles camp. But swing to get on base, not bunt to get on base, and then we're cooking.
Okay, I'll start from the top. Mountcastle, I think at this point in the season where we are specifically today, I would keep him for now. Obviously, I was team trade him over the offseason. I want to make room for Mayo if he's still here, Basayo in a month or two when he's ready to come up and be an everyday superstar. But I think at this point you might want to wait until around the trade deadline. Maybe there's a team that needs some power from first base, DH type, and you can make like a sneaky, buy and sell at the same time type deal, like we kind of saw a little bit last year, but more from the major league side. So that's Mountcastle. Mateo, fine with him being 26 man, being some depth. He can come in a pinch, play some solid defense on infield, pinch run if you need it. He can hit lefties a little bit, but like Nick, like if he was released today after we finished recording this podcast, I'd be like, well, that was fun while it lasted, and it would be fine. Let's see. Mullins, I think he should be a strict platoon player in center field. He starts every game against right-handed pitching. Cowser starts every game in center field against lefties. And then you can always bring him in later for defensive replacement and a pinch hit against a righty later on. Bunting should be banned from the game of baseball. No, not really. But I just think who other than Cedric Mullins or Enrique Bradfield at some point is even going to be a guy that should be bunting for a base hit. So, yeah, unless it's like 13th inning, runner starts on second base. If you want to bunt with anyone but Jorge Mateo, who can't lay one down to save his life, sure, I guess so. But still, I prefer not to bunt in that situation personally. And number 5, it's F4, and it's not even close.
We'll go now to this question from Bobby Jones, and it's about Samuel Basayo's defense. Any word from coaches or those around the org on Basayo's defensive improvement? He has passed the eye test this spring, but haven't seen him do much blocking, which seems to be his biggest weakness. Thoughts there, Nick?
I mean, I haven't watched it, so I don't know. Steve last week was pretty bullish on the defense. Keith Wall's report has been pretty bullish on the defense. I do think that's an area, though, that, of course, he's going to work hard at progressing this year. So, I mean, I don't have anything specific that I've seen personally. So,
that was for Bobby Jones. A reference to The Wire. He's the Wire King. Basayo, man, I saw him block some pitches today when I was watching. He looks really comfortable back there. I'm not going to lie. If it was up to me, he'd be on the opening day roster. That's how high on Basayo I am. So it could be just me fanboying out, but I think he looks pretty good. I don't know what the weaknesses are specifically. I'm sure he can work on little things here and there, but Basayo, he's the guy. Very good analysis.
Yeah, there's still some fundamental things that I think Basayo is going to be working to clean up with blocking balls in the dirt. And honestly, I think this particular time of the year, is the one of the hardest to gauge that because he's back behind the plate with pitchers he's probably never worked with before in some cases, especially if he's in there early in the game for maybe 6 or 7 innings before he's pulled. So it's a little tough right now to dissect how his defense looks. I will say that I think the pitch framing, as far as the eye test is concerned, has looked decent. The arm strength looks really good. The arm accuracy seems to be coming along nicely. And as far as blocking balls in the dirt, I agree that probably is his biggest weakness at this point. I think it's getting better, but I haven't seen anything in camp specifically that makes me think it's gotten a lot better or a lot worse.
It's so hard not to get excited about Basayo, man. Like we can sit here and like we were before the show, like saying, "All right, Kobe Mayo, like, come on, give us something, man." But meanwhile, Basayo's over there just continues to rake, and it's
showing out.
And it even for me, who was like, I'm cool with being extremely patient here with Basayo. He's so young. If he's improving this much defensively, let him continue to do that down there, make him an even better player. But when you get to watch him, as rare as we do this spring training, but when we do get to watch him, he's showing out like that. It's impossible not to get.
I
super
swear, even when he fouls the ball back, like I'm like, oh my God, he just swung so hard. His bat is so fast. If he connected with that, it would have gone 500 feet. Like, he's so fun to watch.
And I go back. Just one more thing about Basayo. Every time we get on Basayo, we can just do. That's what we'll just do. A Basayo episode every week. I just go back to when we had Nico Goodrum on. One of my favorite episodes I think we've ever done still. And I go back to Nico Goodrum. Nico Goodrum played with Yordan Alvarez. And when he unprompted said, "That's Yordan Alvarez," I know everyone jokes about, we got baby Yordan. And it's this whole big joke. But when Nico Goodrum, who has sat in that same dugout as Yordan Alvarez, immediately compared him to Yordan after playing with Basayo as well in Norfolk last year, that's what sent me over the edge. But I'm going to assume this is, I've been staring at this. I'm assuming this is the bird is the word. The next question here.
Yes.
It comes from, he has a question about Chase McDermott. Let's talk about a top pitching prospect here. Do you think McDermott will make a difference for the Orioles once he is healthy, Bob?
Yeah, I do. I think he's going to be in Norfolk's starting rotation, and I think he's going to be the guy that's behind the guy who's maybe behind the other guy. What I'm trying to say is Cade Povich is first up. Maybe Brandon Young is second up at this point, and then McDermott is still there. But if he's pitching lights out and they need someone, he's going to come up and start a game. But once the trade deadline passes, August, September rolls around, he's going to be a weapon for the Orioles out of the bullpen heading into the stretch run, into the playoffs. So I think bare minimum, yeah, he's going to be very, very useful down the stretch with a power arm that batters can't square up even when they make contact. So yeah, absolutely. Give me some money on. You're the gambler, Nick. Is that a bet that's available? Chase McDermott is an impact pitcher for the Baltimore Orioles in the month of September.
If it's out there, hammer it. Take it.
He'll have a role as long as he's healthy because the starter's pitch mix is there. But like Bob just said, he could really be an effective weapon out of the bullpen for the Orioles down the stretch. And we talked a little bit earlier about what Kittredge's injury could mean for the bullpen. And we are probably going to see him this season and see him back healthy. But we also know that the bullpen depth is going to be tested in some way, shape, or form. And if the Orioles have McDermott as a guy they could go to in September to fill in some innings, even if it's more medium leverage spots, that's going to help them out a lot.
Yeah, I'm only struggling with McDermott because I do agree. I think my immediate thought was he's going to be on the DL Hall track this year, where later in the year we do see him make an impact in the bullpen. But when I think longer term, I know this wasn't the question, but expand on it a little bit here. Longer term, I'm at the DL Hall point here with McDermott, where I just put him in the bullpen and keep him there. And I know the Orioles are not going to do that because his ceiling is so high. And I know they're going to keep him and stretch him out as a starter, and they want him healthy, and they want him contributing as a starter. Look, we're already talking about testing the depth, and a healthy McDermott would greatly help that depth this year. And it's someone who could get his feet wet a little bit more. He only made one appearance in the big leagues last year. Get a couple more appearances this year, and then next year he could be really cooking for a more full-time rotation spot. I think that's what the Orioles would prefer, but I daydream about what Chase McDermott could do out of the bullpen full-time with that stuff. It's absolutely disgusting, literally. So he's going to make an impact at some point this year. I do think he's going to follow that DL Hall path. Long term, I'm conflicted on where I would prefer to see them go with McDermott.
All right. So EJ would like to know, what's a prospect that has proven each of you wrong, either wildly surpassed your expectations or never broke through? Nick?
I like this question. Make you think back about things we've said, things we've written, guys we've hyped up and such, guys we missed out on. I think a guy who wildly surpassed my expectations, honestly, unfortunately, he's not in the organization anymore, was Moises Chase. That was the first one that came to my mind. Like, yeah, he was in the back end of our top 30, like when we first started the show 4 or 5 years ago. But I never would have imagined, if the farm system was in a place as it was today, that Chase would be a top 30 guy in the system, considering the walk issues. And then now look at the praise he's getting coming out of Philadelphia. I think Phillies fans or not just Phillies fans, but like national like prospect media are expecting Chase to be a force for the Phillies at some point this year. But a guy who I think that I kind of, proved me wrong. The big name that popped up to my mind was Noah Denoyer. I was such a big Noah Denoyer guy, just because he doesn't get drafted through 40 rounds. Orioles analytics team finds this guy, gives his name to a scout in the North Woods League who watches him. He ends up signing with the Orioles, has this breakout year when he gets to Double-A, goes to the Arizona Fall League Fall Star, gets added to the 40-man roster, legitimate major league quality stuff from Noah Denoyer. But then in 2023 season, he's on the 40-man roster. He gets DFA'd. He struggles in Norfolk. The walk rate spiked, has Tommy John surgery, his second Tommy John surgery now, missed all of 2024. He's now 27 years old, and he's still in the system. He should be in Norfolk this year, but he's 27 years old, going to be working back from a second Tommy John. You wish him the best, but man, I was pretty high on Noah Denoyer, 3 years ago.
So for me, the guy that looking at this question a little bit differently, one player that sticks in the back of my mind of I really wish I had put him on a top 30 list was Tyler Wells. I remember when the Orioles got him in the Rule 5 draft, looking at scouting reports. I remember a lot of Twins-focused outlets were upset that they had lost Wells in the Rule 5 draft. And I looked at the numbers, and I could see what they were talking about. He had success in Double-A. There seemed to be back-end starter potential with the ability to ramp up out of the bullpen. But I remember being down to the last few spots on the list that year and considering Wells anywhere from like 27 down to 30 and not putting him on there because by that point he had not pitched in, I believe, 2 years, maybe a little bit longer. And the year before, the Orioles had 2 Rule 5 picks in camp that they sent back to their previous teams before spring training ended. So I didn't put Wells on my list, and I regretted it within a few months. And even if he doesn't come out from the other side, the second Tommy John surgery, and contribute much to the Orioles, he's still done a lot by being a serviceable and at times very good reliever on bad teams and a really flexible option in 2023 that held the rotation steady in the first half and then gave the bullpen a little bit of a boost in the second half of the season. And then for the guy that kind of fell short of my expectations, Pedro Severino, and it's a completely different angle in this one. I was covering the Nationals when Severino was coming up through the minor leagues. And at that point in time, he was a glove first, no bat prospect. Everyone you talk to loved the glove. They loved his ability to block the ball in the dirt. They loved the arm, the way he could throw out base runners. Everything about Severino's defense graded out really highly. Then I don't know what happened. He got to the major leagues, and every defensive metric showed him as a bad defender. I don't know if he didn't get better. I don't know if he was worn out when he came up through the minor leagues and maybe his knees gave out. I don't know if he came into the minor leagues at the wrong time when Pitt's framing was not necessarily being scouted. So we're still looking at blocking balls in the dirt and throwing arm as the way to evaluate a catcher. I don't know what it was, but somehow the report on Severino as this defensive whiz behind the plate did not match up with the major league player he became. It was so confusing to me, still is.
No, because my only memory of him is that he was the catcher that couldn't catch. Could hit a little bit, surprisingly. But yeah, for me, I'll say a couple that I missed on. First one, Yusniel Diaz. Like, I know he was the much hyped guy from the Manny Machado trade and he started out strong when he came over. But after seeing him in person at Double A Bowie, I want to say 2021 or 2022, the eye test, like he looked like a man amongst boys out on the field. He had the presence about him. The ball sounded different off the bat. Like it was just like,
The
wow,
arm,
okay.
the
Yeah, like
outfield
just
arm.
the tools, they were all there. They were all loud. And the fact that he's basically washed out of baseball at 28 years old with one count him one plate appearance in his career is kind of shocking to me, because even if he wasn't going to be like an everyday player, there's no way I would have told you that he would washed out like the way he did. And the other side of the spectrum, Felix Bautista, like we knew how he could do if he could ever start finding the strike zone, but to go from low A to like the best relief pitcher in all of baseball in a span of 2 or 3 years. Don't think I had that one on my bingo card, or he would have at least shown up on a top 50 prospect list for us, you know?
Right. Everyone had Adam Stauffer above Felix Batista back in the day. So
I certainly did.
everyone did. So everyone missed that one. Just unbelievable story.
I just thought of one more, Mike Yastrzemski. That is the reason I don't say old for the level anymore, because that was the book on Yastrzemski coming up through the Orioles system was, hey, he's hitting well at Double A, he's old for the level, gets Triple A, not much there, and then Orioles end up trading him, and I still think that if you look objectively, that's been the worst move of the Mike Elias era. I'll go down this question from Bobby.
Tyler Erb.
Yep. Given the untouchables, what's the best package the O's could/would make for an impact arm? And he puts it in parentheses here. Please don't say Keeler Morphe. Bob, I'm suspecting you're thinking along the same line, so I'll let you start.
I'm not going to say Keeler Morphe. There's no way I'm trading Baseball America's sleeper prospect of the day today, Monday, the 10th of March, as we speak. Yeah, I think, again, I've said it earlier this episode, Sandy Alcantara, got to have him. I mean, he's got basically 3 years of control left. He's hitting 100 miles per hour with a stuff plus of 97 on his four seam, and his four other pitches are all pretty well above 100. So 4+ pitches, including a changeup, I think has a 130 stuff plus so far this spring. Looks pretty healthy to me. Still only 28 years old. I want to say, give me that. I think you will probably have to give up Kobe Mayo and forget his struggles at spring training. It's been like 25 plate appearances. He's still a top 10, 20 prospect in all of baseball. That is going to hurt to give up. But if you're going to do it, I think a potential top of the rotation arm for the next 3 years is pretty good reason to do so. So I think a package led by Kobe Mayo might be what it takes to get a guy like him.
Yeah, I think if you're talking Sandy Alcantara specifically, I do think you have to include Kobe Mayo. Like when you're talking about the Marlins, they're going to want either Samuel Basayo, the star-studded Dominican prospect, or they're going to want Kobe Mayo, the Florida boy, come back home and be our star player. Like, I mean, realistically, we all love Enrique Bradfield Jr. and see what he could bring to the organization. But like, do we think Enrique Bradfield Jr. has a super high trade value? I don't think so. Vance Honeycutt slid way down the draft. I think there are a lot of teams who are not going to be interested in trading for Vance Honeycutt. Like, I don't see the Orioles. If McDermott was healthy, it'd be easier, but McDermott with the injury issues, I think that makes it more difficult as well. I know the Dylan Beavers thing. I get it. Just joking with everybody. If you need to trade Dylan Beavers, we can trade Dylan Beavers. I'm okay. There are no untouchables, honestly, except probably Sammy Wasayo. But again, how high, even if you're super high on Beavers, he's not going to be able to lead a trade package for Sandy Alcantara. So yeah, I think it's going to have to start with the Kobe Mayo.
And the reason I'm fixating on Alcantara right now is because I feel like the Marlins are the only team that's going to be willing to trade a guy like him early in the season. I feel like they did last year. They traded a guy. Was it Luis Ariz? They traded early, or somebody last year. They did not wait for the deadline, where I think every other team is going to wait pretty close to the deadline before they decide on moving anybody.
Yeah, I agree, because the Twins could be in the thick of the wild card race at the end of June and not want to move Pablo Lopez. The Padres are probably going to be in contention. So the longer you have those players and you're winning, the harder it gets to trade them. I agree with you guys. I think realistically, any package has to start with Kobe Mayo. As Nick said, I think McDermott's injury probably diminishes the chances you could build a package around him. I don't see Honeycutt, Beavers, Fabian, or Bradfield being a guy that you could build a package around. If you want to go a little bit deeper, let's say you're not getting a top of the rotation arm, but you're getting another version of Zach Eflin, then maybe it comes down to Brandon Young, because Young did look good in spring training, close to Major League ready arm, that if you're a bad team and you trade for Brandon Young, you could plug him in as your number 4 or number 5 right now and at least feel like you've got some ceiling and some development there. But he could even be an upgrade over the guy that you have in place right now. And the reason I bring up Young is that the Orioles, beyond Beavers and Fabian and Mayo, don't really have those AAA, close to Major League ready bats like they've had in years past. So I think you're going to have to start looking at the arms at that point.
Yeah, and you joke all the time about the Padres too, and I trade AJ Preller, a bunch of Dominican Summer League prospects for a Cesar Michael King, but AJ Preller, I think this is it for AJ Preller. He has to win, or I think he's out. And so he doesn't have a farm system, but I don't think he cares. He's got like 2 guys. One, he's got Ethan Salas and is it DeVries? He's got 1.5 really good prospects. But I don't think he cares about his farm system anymore, because he needs to make some noise at the major league level. But we'll go on from trades. We're on Yoni's question. Yes. Yoni wants to know, where does the team bullpen ERA rank at the end of the year? Bob?
I think that the Orioles will have a top 5 to 7 bullpen. I guess if we're going by ERA, that would be the way to do it. Yeah, I think we're going to have basically a top 5 to 7 bullpen when all is said and done. I think, yeah, Kittredge being out, it definitely hurts. But with Bautista back, I think it helps things kind of fall in place behind him. Spring training numbers mean less than nothing. And especially for veteran relievers who are just like, okay, do I have my stuff? Like Sir Anthony Dominguez has given up a crap ton of runs because he's throwing the ball right down the middle. That's what the heat maps show. And maybe he's just like not worried about command right now. He's just trying to get his stuff right. So I just can't take spring training numbers, especially for relievers, for anything more than they're throwing pitches. So I'm still a huge fan of this bullpen, and even of the guys like Colin Selby, Luis Gonzalez, and Cade Stroud, guys that are just sitting down there waiting. Chase McDermott, Brandon Young, if we need to use them out of the bullpen. So I'm very high on this bullpen, even if Kittredge misses the first half of the season.
Yeah, I still like this bullpen a lot. I see it landing maybe in the 7 to 10 range in terms of ERA. No lower than 10, but I think it would be tough to get higher than 7 or 5. Bautista coming back really is the X factor here. As long as he's able to get back to himself somewhat early in the season, it doesn't even have to be on opening day. If he's back to himself at some point in the first half, and you have Soto, who looked really good after a couple of rough outings right after the trade last year for the Orioles. You have Cano. I agree. I think Dominguez will figure it out in the regular season. The bullpen's going to be fine. Losing Kittredge does hurt a little bit, but it's not going to make or break this team's season.
Yeah, you lose Jacob Webb and Danny Coulomb, but you also lost Cole Irvin and Craig Kimbrell, and you get Felix Bautista. So I see easily top 10. And no one has said the name Keegan Aiken. The dog, the man in this bullpen, Keegan Aiken. Like he had a fantastic year last year. Yeah, I think it was Johan Duran. I think the Twins closer. I think he said the other day, like they asked him about his velo, and he basically said, "I don't care what the velo is. I'm not trying to throw hard." Like perfect example of these relievers. Like Bob said, just throw a pitch. Honestly, that's it with these guys. Dominguez is going to be fine. Soto looks fantastic. After it was a rough start, but he settled in really well. Honestly, even with Kittredge out, call me crazy, but I love the bullpen.
Completely agree. And last question here comes from BirdFan123 on the Discord, and he says, "Which baseball movie would you remake / reboot first, and which would you put in the do not touch list? One for each category. You would have full reign on how to approach the reboot." Zach?
So, fun fact, a little bit of background on this question. I actually pulled this out of the movie section of Discord. It was not in the mailbag. I pulled it out of there because I like to check in on the movies channel once a week to see how much Bob is getting roasted for criticizing Shrek, because that seems to be a weekly occurrence now. But to reboot something, I would go with that really bad John Goodman movie about Babe Ruth. Just start all over again. Either make it a limited series or make it an hour and a half movie that focuses on a very specific time period of his life. Find someone else to play him. John Goodman can do a lot of things well. Convincingly playing a professional athlete, even one built like Babe Ruth, is not one of them. So find a better actor or a better actor for that part. Make it either a movie that is focused on 1 or 2 years of his life or a limited series that covers his whole life. Regardless, we don't need a 2-hour epic biopic about Babe Ruth's life again. And then the do not touch, Bull Durham. It was just perfect the first time around. The cast is perfect. The writing is perfect. The way the movie was shot, where it was shot is perfect. That is my favorite baseball movie of all time. And I hope that no one ever tries to remake it because you can't do it.
Orioles fans need a remake of Angels in the Outfield, the Orioles version, because a lot of Orioles fans need to start believing here in this team. Things are going to be okay. This team is the window is wide open. The window is not closing. You guys know I don't watch a ton of movies, and Angels in the Outfield was actually on last night. I watched it for about 15 minutes, and the memories. One of my favorite movies. We need a remake of Angels in the Outfield, but Orioles specific to get Orioles fans believing. That's my answer.
Shrek sucks. Okay. The animation is like you're playing, I think someone said like you're playing Roller Coaster Tycoon from the 90s on the computer. It's like constantly 5 to 10 years behind its time. It's not as funny as it thinks it is. The Puss in Boots movies, those are actually pretty good, but the Shrek movies suck, and I will stand firm on that. But to get to the question, I would say do not touch the Sandlot. It's mostly just nostalgia, but I think that is just like a perfect time capsule movie of a time and a space when America's pastime was all kids cared about, and that is no longer the case. Well, Shohei Ohtani is in Fortnite now, so there is that. But the movie I would reboot, I'm going to say Field of Dreams, because I think it's a little overrated. It's not that great, and no one goes and has a catch. That's kind of weird. You play catch, you don't have a catch, right? But my vision is it's set in the future. Some kid gets his VR AI video game system out, and he's going to go play baseball with the 90s steroid era sluggers and just have a good old time. Mark McGuire carrying a kid on his arm, and Sammy starts doing his thing, and Yeah, that's the way I see it.
Sounds kind of post-apocalyptic, but also fun at the same time.
It's like
So I
Ready
look
Player
forward-
One combined with Field of Dreams.
Well, hopefully we can bring that project to fruition. And if you want to help Bob bring that project to fruition, become a member of our Patreon community today. You can sign up for as little as $3 a month, also join to $5 and $10 levels, and have access to bonus coverage throughout the season, as well as additional perks, including access to our patron-only channels on Discord. That does it for this episode this week. We will be back later this week to break down the Orioles spring breakout roster. In the meantime, you can check us out on our many social media channels, including Facebook, Instagram, Threads, X, TikTok, and YouTube. We're also over at Substack, OriolesOnTheVerge.substack.com. For Bob Phelan and Nick Stevens, this is Zach Spedden. You've been listening to Orioles on the Verge, presented by BetOnline and part of the Believe Podcast Network. Welcome to Orioles on the Verge. This is Zach Spedden, joined as always by Bob Phelan and Nick Stevens. On tonight's episode, we're going to break down the Orioles spring breakout roster. The Orioles prospects will square off against the Yankees prospects on Saturday, and the Orioles will be fielding a very interesting group of players this year. We'll be talking about that, and we're going to get into a discussion of what is now the strongest core group of positional players by position in this farm system. For years, it's always been a debate over whether or not the Orioles have more infield depth versus more high-quality outfield depth. This year, the discussion seems to be changing a little bit, and the spring breakout rosters reflect that. So we're going to get into all of that on tonight's episode of Orioles on the Verge, which is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting in 2025. Whether you're a seasoned fan or a first-time bettor, BetOnline is your ultimate game day companion. It's the largest selection of odds on everything from NBA and college basketball to the NHL and UFC. BetOnline continues to be your number one sports betting source. From every three-pointer to hat trick, BetOnline has you covered with odds, stats, and more for every game, every play, and every win. BetOnline, the game starts here. Last week, the Orioles unveiled their spring breakout roster, and these are the prospects who'll be squaring off against the Yankees prospects on Saturday night at 6:05 at Ed Smith Stadium down in Sarasota. And if you listen to our recent top 50 prospects countdown, a lot of these names are going to be familiar to you, and they reflect a lot of the trends we've been seeing unfold in the Orioles player development system over the last few years, including the influx of players signed through international free agency, as well as a continually improving pitching development program. And that's where I'm going to start right here. The pitchers that are included on this roster are right-handers Michael Ferret, Keeler Morphe, Pat Riley, Nestor Herman, Cameron Weston, and Levi Wells. They were joined by left-hander Luis De Leon, who looked pretty good in an outing against the Pirates on Monday night while he was up with the Major League team for the Orioles. So we'll get into every facet of this roster on this episode. But, Nick, I'll start with you here as this group of pitchers. I think we're pretty excited to see these guys take the mound.
Yeah, the only thing with this game, a couple things that bum me out. The roster was like, hell yeah, this is amazing roster. And I love that Major League Baseball is doing this. But then the realization sets in on how this is actually going to, I think, be a kind of a bummer, personally, not to bring the mood down, but it's at Ed Smith Stadium, like you said, so we don't get StatCast data, which is unfortunate. And it's only 7 innings, which is, again, unfortunate. But this roster is going to be really fun. Like, if you hear us talk about Nestor Herman a lot, you hear us talk about Keeler Morphe a lot, Michael Ferret a lot, and if you haven't seen them pitch, you're going to get an opportunity to see them pitch, and that's going to be fascinating. A lot of people got to watch Levi Wells pitch for the first time on Monday night, and I didn't know he had 100 miles per hour in the tank. We knew it was like 97, 98. We did not know he was 100 miles per hour with an absolute hellish slider. No clue. As far as I'm gonna imagine that I'm the high man on Levi Wells among the group, probably because I am honestly probably a little bit ridiculously high last year, but even I didn't know he had that in him. So that was fantastic. And that's some of the fun things. Like, we saw Trace Bright put up some fantastic numbers in last year's game. That sucks that we're not going to be able to see some of this updated data. And it's going to take longer because, like, Ferret, Morphe, like, these guys aren't going to reach AAA. Pat Riley will, so we'll get to see that soon enough when he gets to AAA. But yeah, I think it's going to be an awesome opportunity for people who, you're listening to the show, you're reading stuff, but if you haven't been able to actually watch these guys pitch, this is a perfect group to sit back and hopefully enjoy hopefully watching them mow down some Yankee hitters in the process.
Yeah, if Levi Wells is just casually pumping 99, 100 miles per hour as a starting pitcher this year, he's going to rise up our rankings tremendously fast because, oh my God. And then 20 inches of break on the sweeper. Yeah, it was good stuff. There's no doubt about it. I even saw guys in our Discord be like, who is Levi Wells and why isn't he pitching in the Orioles Major League bullpen right now? So that was Garrett, by the way.
Hey, shout out Jeff Ponce, because right after the draft, Jeff Ponce said Levi Wells could be in the Major League bullpen his first year as a pro. Didn't work out, but he hit the nail on the head.
Yeah, that was a good call. But this pitching staff, like Ferret, Morphe, Riley, Herman, De Leon, Weston, Wells, I could not be more excited to watch. I guess they'll get an inning each, but like this is like the perfect encapsulation of year of the pitcher right here in one handful of pitchers, because all of these guys I'm super excited to see with like a major league quality camera, center field camera with no Statcast. Yeah, that really sucks. But we'll get plenty of reports out of this, and we'll get eyes on these guys against good competition with good camera angles and good quality, like HD cameras. So it'll be a ton of fun. And yeah, this is what I'm saying, like if Levi Wells is made the changes that he's made, and last year we saw Ryan Long come out throwing like 98 miles per hour. Like this is the jump some of these pitchers can make over an off season, adding a pitch, tweaking things, adding velocity. This is going to be a nice sneak peek before we get into the minor league season about the changes these guys have made. And these are already the best pitching prospects in the system, so even better.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this will apply a little bit for the reason that Kobe Mayo is not here. Brandon Young probably isn't here because he stood a chance of possibly making the opening day roster in camp. And if there's another injury before the end of spring training, you have to think that Young is going to be one of the first guys the Orioles turn to. So when you get beyond him, this is the best group of pitching prospects you can ask for. And I agree with Bob. It kind of encapsulates everything that the Orioles have right now. You've got a few international arms here in Morphe and De Leon. You have some of the finds deeper in the draft like Ferret and Herman. And then Weston, I think, is really going to be fascinating to see because you look at every pitcher that is in this mix. All of them throw harder than Cameron Weston, fastball-wise. But the way that Weston can just seemingly throw any pitch over for a strike with a lot of movement, that is going to be such a fun contrast to go. And this is how I hope they line it up. Nestor Herman, 1 inning, Cameron Weston in the middle, and then Keeler Morphe after that. That would just be really fun to watch.
Yeah, I'm super excited about Weston. Just throw all your pitches. I think he's just going to consistently be underrated because of the guys that throw the gas are all around him, but he's going to be the guy that's just going to quietly get to the majors and have a really, really strong career, and I'm here for it.
We'll go into the positional players now, and it should come as a little surprise that the number one prospect in the Orioles farm system and one of the top prospects in all of baseball, Samuel Basallo, is on this roster, but he tops a catching group that is really deep as he's followed by Creed Willems, Ethan Anderson, and Miguel Rodriguez. So all 4 catchers listed there were on our top 50 list, and of them, 3 were ranked inside of the top 30. So that gives you a good sense that the Orioles have a lot of catching depth right now, and there is not necessarily a situation of quantity over quality because all 4 of these players have their own attributes that make them interesting prospects, with Basallo obviously being the headliner, but the Orioles really are deep in this position.
Yeah, it's Miguel Rodriguez getting there is pretty cool. A guy who just cracked our top, I think he was 50th on our top 50 prospect list. And this is a guy who, we'll see what he can do defensively, but he's a hitter. Like he is a true hitter who walks more than he strikes out. And a lot of these guys are probably only going to get one at bat. So again, that's something else to like temper expectations a little bit here. if Rodriguez gets in, he's good. I imagine he will, because Ethan Anderson's probably going to play like first base or maybe right field or something. But like Rodriguez might get one at bat. If he strikes out, it means nothing. But like it's cool to get that Orioles fans get to see a guy like that, because he's someone who I think is going to make a lot of noise this year. Yeah, Basayo is great. You're going to have Basayo and Adley hopefully for the next couple of years. But to showcase this catching depth, man, everyone knows who Creed is. Everyone knows the hair. Everyone knows everything about Creed, but getting eyes on Ethan Anderson and Miguel Rodriguez is going to be pretty cool. I think Ethan Anderson had an at-bat the other day in a spring training game. Another guy I think a lot of people are super high on. So, yeah, this catching group, it doesn't even include guys like Anutis Mordon. It doesn't include Ryan Stafford. Like, it shows you just how deep the catching position is in this organization.
Yeah, no doubt. Like every year, it seems like they're drafting and signing like 2 or 3 in the draft, another 2 or 3 in international signing period of catchers with really strong upside. Not even talking about Andrew Tess, who I think has potential as a high school selection. So, yeah, clearly the Orioles love up the middle talent, and they do not skip catcher when it comes to up the middle, because it is a very important position. And I guess it's like the Moneyball approach. We're going to get all the catchers. Give them all to us. So, yeah, it's exciting. I guess again, just like the pitchers, we'll have a new catcher every inning with 4 catchers on the roster. But hey, I'm here for it. We already gushed about Samuel Basayo earlier in the week, so give us a chance to gush about these other catchers. Creed Willems, he's seen a lot of time at Major League Spring Training this year, looking like Kenny Powers out there. I saw John Kruk was talking about last weekend. Makes sense. But yeah, Miguel Rodriguez and Ethan Anderson, who I know we're super high on his bat. So let's see it. I think Ethan Anderson's like Adley Rutschman without the defense.
And we're going to come back to the catchers in a little bit, but go now to the infielders, a group that includes Griff O'Farrell, Aaron Estrada, Leandro Arias, Joshua Lorenzo, DJ Layton, Max Wagner, and Fernando Peguero. All of those players, except for one, ranked inside of our top 50 prospects list, and that is Peguero. And I thought we should actually start with him, because this is the one where people might have been a little bit surprised. And to be honest, I don't know if Peguero was on our radars necessarily for the top 50 list. I know I kind of looked at him at the back end, but he didn't get a single vote between the 3 of us. So not only was he not in the top 50, but he wasn't highlighted in last week's episode covering the best of the rest. Nevertheless, a lot of interesting attributes with Peguero. 20-year-old switch hitter who just coming off a strong year down in the Florida Complex League, figures to open this season at Delmarva, has cut the strikeout rate down a little bit. Actually went up a little bit last year, but strikeout rate continues to hold kind of steady, while good walk numbers, steals a lot of bases, has some versatility. So a player with good athleticism that's flying a little bit under the radar right now.
To me, he's like new and improved Nolberth Romero. I think he's going to be just a really, really solid organizational depth piece. And obviously, he had a great, I think it was second run at the DSL. He had some great numbers. Him and Ellis Cuevas both did when they repeated the level. So there might be more upside than I'm thinking. But for me, I think he's going to be that guy that you need an infielder in AAA this week. Well, Peguero will be there. And next week it's AA. He can go there and hold his own too. So I think he's just going to be really important to the health of the minor league system as a whole. But yeah, he's got tools for sure.
I noted, I was going to ask you if am I missing something here? Because he repeated the DSL and had a good year, but like he's a bounce around guy. Like he got promoted when he gets promoted to Norfolk for a week. And I remember seeing comments last year, people like, "Oh, Fernando Peguero getting the jump to Norfolk." I'm like, isn't that like the telltale sign of like you're kind of toast? Like, but I don't know. Maybe he is gonna provide something. I thought that was a weird pick, to be honest, but I don't know. I like the rest of this infield though. I like the international flavor here. Leandro Arias and Joshua Lorenzo and Aaron Estrada specifically. Like Lorenzo, I think again, this is he signed as a 16-year-old kid. enormous raw power as well. And I think he had an unconfirmed ankle injury it was last year. Whatever the injury was really delayed his season. I'm pumped to see Lorenzo on the field for the first time because I've never seen him on a baseball field in a real game before, not even in DSL. So I'm jacked to see him, to see what he looks like out there, because he's still, what, 18? I don't know how old he is now. He's probably only 18 right now still. Maybe starts in Delmarva. We'll see. But this is a kid with enormous raw power and a lot of big, loud tools. I just think last year was a kind of an injury-riddled year that you can wash away, and we'll see what he does in his first real full season of pro ball here.
Yeah, absolutely. Very excited about Lorenzo. Think he could be a huge breakout player this year. Obviously, we love Estrada and Arias. We've talked about them and their upside a lot. Griff O'Farrell, a little divisive as far as where he lands on prospect lists with the floor and the ceiling. But also, you got DJ Layton here, which is cool because he's never even played a professional inning, if I'm not mistaken. And also Max Wagner, who got into the game Monday night, which was cool to see. Hopefully this means he's healthy. And hopefully the absence of Frederick Bencosme does not mean that he's not healthy, because that's the only thing that gives me pause about these rosters in a couple spots. It's like, where's this guy? Is it because he's banged up? Hope not.
Yeah, I might have expected Ben Cosme on the roster, certainly over Peguero and maybe over Wagner. Did want to talk about Wagner for a second, though. If this is just a sign that he's healthy, I'm fine with that because I think that's really what he needs right now is reps. But where do you guys think? We've kind of covered this. He's down in the lower 40s on our top 50 list, but what kind of year do you think this is going to be for him? Do you think he needs to go out and have a big year to kind of reclaim the mantle a little bit, or is it just an opportunity for him to ease back in?
I think it's a huge make or break year for Max Wagner, and it's not really so much his fault. I just think there is a cavalcade of guys coming behind him in the infield. You see it right here on this list. Like, these guys are not far away from Double A. Well, some of them are, but some of them are not. Estrada, Arias, O'Farrell, they'll be Double A worthy pretty soon. Lorenzo, if he breaks out, who knows? And there's other guys as well. So I think he's going to need a pretty solid year. You give him some leeway in the first half, but by the end of the season, he needs to be up and showing the promise that he had, or he could be the next guy like John Rhodes taken in the minor league phase of the Rule 5 draft next offseason.
Yeah, I can't remember what I said early in this offseason. I know I addressed that specific point. Whatever I said then, my new thought about Max Wagner now is this is a make or break year for Wagner, because he's going to be 24 by the end of the year, and he flashed the power when he was in Aberdeen. The speed came out of nowhere. He didn't steal bases in college. He didn't steal them when he first debuted, and then he stole like 26, 27 bases in Aberdeen. Again, like we talk about a lot, I think that was a Roberto Mercado / fast Aberdeen field that boosted that. But like, Wagner's flashed some tools here. I still don't think he has a super high ceiling, but if he wants to put himself back on the map and, be a depth piece here in Baltimore, or somebody who maybe there's another organization who really values Wagner and sees something in him, and he can be an addition to a trade package, he's got to start building that up now. But he had no offseason last year before the 2024 season because of hamate bone surgery. And then he had the back injury that ended up shutting him down for pretty much all of the year 2024. So he's also had a concussion. I think that was in 2023, though. He's just been beat around since he's got up to the Double-A level. So hopefully he stays healthy and salvages something here.
Let's go over now the outfielders, and this is about as packed of a group as I think you can get for this organization right now. Headlined by Enrique Bradfield Jr., Vance Honeycutt, Dylan Beavers, and Judd Fabian, all of whom ranked inside the top 10 of our top 50. And then you round that out with some either international free agents that are younger and still relatively early in their careers, or recent draftees. In the case of Austin O'Verne, who is joined by Steven Martinez, Thomas Sosa, and Jordan Sanchez. So if you like elite speed, you got that with Bradfield. You've got a lot of guys who can hit for power here, as well as some good defenders. So what do you guys see in this group of outfielders?
this is the most exciting group for me. I mean, Steve Martinez is 17 years old. Like 17 years old. I think I saw he's going to be the second youngest player participating in the series of games that every team is putting together. And to me, that just shows an incredible vote of confidence by the organization to want to put him out there and showcase him, especially when you consider every single outfielder listed here is exciting in some way or another, has big breakout potential. Jordan Sanchez, Thomas Sosa, we've talked about to death. Vance Honeycutt, like this is the biggest boomer bust number one first round draft pick that the Orioles have taken under this front office. Austin Overn as well, Judd Fabian, Dylan Beavers. It's just name after name here is exciting. I can't wait to see them all play. But Steven Martinez, it's like number one with a bullet. He's here for a reason. Like you don't see Elvin Garcia here in the infield. They put Fernando Peguero over him. So the fact that Steve Martinez is here says a lot to me. And the fact that Ellis Cuevas is not here makes me hope that he's not hurt.
I think I noted Ellis Cuevas too, but my thought was it's because this outfield is so freaking stacked. Like there's some legitimate guys that are not in this outfield group. And so like you zoom out and look at this system as a whole, I think this shows you this is where the depth is, this is where the strength is as well. And also this is where the biggest boom bust is with these guys. Thomas Sosa, I think, is a big one. Steven Martinez, obviously, because he's so young. Jordan Vance Honeycutt, like these are all big boom bust guys, but the ceiling is just astronomical with so many of these guys. What if Vance Honeycutt cuts the chase, cuts the swing and miss, and starts becoming more the Vance Honeycutt that people were hoping he would be as the potential 1-1 in last year's draft? Like Steven Martinez hit 5 home runs as a 16-year-old child in the Dominican Summer League last year. That may not sound like a lot, but that is massive for him. If Sosa, like you said, we've beaten him to death. The exit velo numbers. If he starts tapping into that raw power, into game power, like that's going to transform him. And I don't even think we talk enough about his speed out there. He's a potential 2020 type player. And it's just like, oh yeah, Judd Fabian, Austin Overn, and Jordan Sanchez are there as well. Overn's got 2 70 grade tools in his fielding and his speed. Jordan Sanchez, a little bit older in the DSL last year, but Cuban prospect who had like a 160 something WRC plus, could be a starting outfielder for Delmarva to begin the year. Like, and Judd Fabian, as we talk about, like that's a potential 4th outfielder in the major leagues, and he's just like an afterthought among this group, it seems like. So this perfectly encompasses kind of the system as a whole. This is where the fire happens, the magic happens right here with this group.
So that leads into the next topic I wanted to bring up in this episode, which is if you're looking at position players, where is the strength in this farm system now? Because for years, it's always kind of bounced back and forth between the infielders and the outfielders, because the infielders have always had that one guy at the top, whether it's been Gunnar in the past or Kobe Mayo now. And this year, this is not the case, but in a lot of years, you would have that top guy in Henderson, Holiday, or Mayo, followed by guys like Joey Ortiz, Connor Norby, Jordan Westberg, where it's like these are not necessarily perennial all-stars in the making, but there's possibly solid major league potential here. You don't necessarily have that now with the infielders. Outfielders, meanwhile, you guys just touched on it, some big question marks with a lot of players in this group, but it's a very athletic group and one with a lot of upside. And then you look at the catchers. And catching is a position where you generally need to be deep, but you generally don't need to be deep with potential major league quality talent. Now, I don't say that to say that I think all 4 of the catchers we talked about earlier in Basayo, Anderson, Willems, and Rodriguez are going to be major league catchers, but all 4 of them have some tool or a series of tools that makes them interesting. And it's not just a guy with a really good glove that can't hit, but he'll get to the major leagues because of his defense, or a catcher who hits for a lot of power but can't do anything else. These 4 players have pretty well-rounded skill sets, especially for being as young as they are in the case of Rodriguez and Basayo. So what do you guys think right now is the strongest position player group in the farm system?
I can't imagine and maybe I'm wrong, maybe it's the Dodgers, but I can't imagine another organization that has the top end and depth of talent at the catcher position that the Orioles do between Basayo, Ethan Anderson, Miguel Rodriguez. Who am I forgetting? Creed Willems, of course. And also you have Anudis Mordan, you got Silas Ardway, you got Maverick Hanley, and it just goes on and on and on. Andrew Tess, Ryan Stafford, we've talked about. So probably catcher is the answer, but the outfielders are still the most exciting just because of what could be with the catchers. It seems pretty simple. Basayo, I think, should be even higher in the prospect rankings than he is. And everyone else is pretty damn strong as well. But man, those outfielders are tantalizing to me.
Yeah, I mean, there's a strong case to be made for catching, but I love this outfield group, and it's the ceiling that these guys represent. And yeah, pick a guy. Every single one of them has a major question mark next to their name, but if one or two of these guys hit, and it's a big group to choose from, if one or two of them hit, you're talking about a real big time impact major league bat. Like if Vance Honeycutt hits, if it's Enrique Bradfield Jr., if it's Steven Martinez in 3 years, like even if it's just one of them, you are talking about a potential like Gold Glove outfielder, the next big thing here in Baltimore. So I do think it's the outfield. But yeah, I do think it is fair. And we talked about this a couple of weeks ago with the infield. Nobody going to give them love here. It's because there isn't that gunner. There isn't that Jackson Holiday. But we talked about when we were doing the best tool stuff, like, did we go with any of these infield prospects? I don't think we really did. I think you got to dig deep. It's DJ Layton. It's Luis Almeida. It's Elvin Garcia, Emilio Sanchez. It's these 16, 17, 18-year-old guys who are still in the FCL, who might be in Delmarva this year, that represent the true upside. Because, like, you look at the top, yeah, Griffo Farrell, I don't think any of us would agree has a super high ceiling. Leandro Arias and Aaron Estrada, these guys I think are high floor, but I don't see super high ceilings with them either, but could be potential impact guys in the major leagues. But like Carter Young, Anthony Servideo, these guys are going to be up in AAA. Like there's just not that impact infielder anymore in the system, but you got to dig deep for the infield guys.
Yeah, I went back and forth between outfielders and catchers, and the reason that I settle on outfielders is something that Nick touched on, which is that even if two in this group hit, it's a big win for the Orioles, and it's a much larger pool of players to choose from than there is a catching. Now, I will say that if your rate of success is 2 out of 4 catchers from that group of Willems, Rodriguez, Basayo, and Anderson hit, that's pretty good. But for the outfielders, I feel pretty confident that you've got 2 speed and defense guys in Bradfield and O'Byrne. One of them is at least going to be a very high floor, highest ceiling fourth outfielder. Maybe Vance Honeycutt hits. Maybe he doesn't, but maybe you get a few years of 30-30 type power from him with good center field defense, kind of a Drew Stubbs type career. So there's a wide range of outcomes with these outfielders, but I think that ultimately when we look back in a few years, 2 of these guys will hit and end up contributing at the major league level.
Like, who's the guy that everyone is gushing over after the spring game? Who's the guy that is the new social media darling prospect that everyone's like, oh damn, I did not know we had him?
Nasty Nestor.
I'm going to go with Morphe.
It's going to be a pitcher for sure. And I'm going to say Cameron Weston does some funky stuff. And he gets like 3 quick ground ball outs. And people are like, I want him in the big leagues tomorrow to help this bullpen. When, as they're watching this game, and the Major League Spring Training Club gives up 3 more bullpen home runs.
Hey, I wouldn't rule it out with anybody in this group of pitchers that someone's going to break through and do something.
All right, so then it's going to be DJ Layton then, because we didn't talk about any hitter.
Exactly. So look forward to DJ Layton's 2 home run game this weekend. I do have some exciting news here to drop at the end of this episode. We have a special bonus episode coming Wednesday night at 9 p.m. We will be live with former Oriole, former Major League All-Star Arthur Rhodes. Rhodes is going to be the pitching coach for the Atlantic League's Hagerstown Flying Boxcars this season. He's going to join us to talk about his career in the majors as well as what's coming up for him with the Boxcars in 2025. You're not going to want to miss that. In the meantime, you can check us out on our many social media channels, including Facebook, Instagram, Threads, X, Blue Sky, TikTok, and YouTube. And we're also over at Substack, OriolesOnTheVerge.substack.com. And while you're browsing around the internet, be sure to sign up, become a member of our Patreon community today at the $3, $5, or $10 levels and have access to bonus coverage throughout the season, as well as Patreon exclusive channels in our Discord and more. For Bob Phelan and Nick Stevens, this is Zach Sped. You've been listening to Orioles on the Verge, presented by BetOnline and part of the Believe Podcast Network.